You're listening to Coming of Cage, a Nicolas Cage podcast. Hey everybody, welcome back to Coming of Cage, your Nicolas Cage movie discussion podcast. I am one of your two hosts, Derek, and I've got my co-host and partner in crime, Ryan. How you doing, buddy?
Oh, I'm doing. How are you?
I'm doing too. I'm doing too. For those who are new to the show, each episode we discuss a different Nicolas Cage movie based on our random Wheel O Cage, where we spin to find out the film that we're talking about next. And the one that came up here is 2016's Dog Eat Dog, which was stars Nicolas Cage, of course, as well as Willem Dafoe and Christopher Matthew Cook. It's directed by Paul Schrader, who, if you've been following along with the show, also directed the movie we talked about in episode 10, Dying of the Light. And this is episode 16. So if you do not remember, Paul Schrader wrote screenplays for Raging Bull, Taxi Driver, and relevant here, The Last Temptation of Christ, which is the movie where Willem Dafoe starred as Jesus. So yeah, an interesting guy, director Paul Schrader, screenwriter Paul Schrader. He did not write this one, but he did direct this one. IMDb describes the movie as, quote, a crew of ex-cons are hired by a Cleveland mafioso to kidnap the baby of a rival mobster.
Which doesn't happen until like 50 minutes into the movie.
At least.
But yeah.
Man, I don't. This is a weird movie, man. I'm not gonna lie. This is a weird movie. But basically, the way we normally do this is Ryan takes notes, and then we go through his notes, which tend to be in chronological order of the film. So, Ryan, what's your first note for Dog Eat Dog?
My first note is strong opening.
Like the whole scene?
Well, I think when it opens, it's basically like Willem Dafoe's character like, doing drugs and having like a acid trip of some kind in this random house that's already like even outside of the acid trip. It's weird. It's got like paintings everywhere and it's like there's pink and just a very weirdly designed house. The whole movie, we'll probably reference this quite a bit, but it felt like art students that were trying to prove themselves were the ones that designed everything in this movie, from like sets to like wardrobe. It felt like it was people trying to be like edgy and like push the envelope and the whole time, and didn't really have much substance beyond that.
Well, and a lot of scenes used kind of a unique lens on the camera to create a warping effect on the edges when it would pan. You know,
not only that, but they also like shot a lot of the scenes in weird ways. Like when two people were having conversations, they would have like the whole screen be blank, except for like the bottom left corner would have the person that's talking in it. I'm not even making a joke. Like no, that is an actual shot for like 5 minutes of this movie.
I know, man. It's so wild. So in that opening scene, like he gets a phone call and it's never really resolved what that phone call is
Nothing
about.
In this movie is really resolved. We'll just start with that.
I mean, we find out whose house it is.
Yeah, very little is resolved in this entire movie.
But like, yeah, he guts fish is the story that he tells this guy on the phone, and the guy doesn't believe him, which, since we have no context for who this person on the phone is, I don't know why he doesn't believe him. But
yeah, my second note was that phone is aggressive, because as the phone is ringing, it's like slamming itself against the wall.
Yeah.
It's just, and it's like an old style, like almost like a rotary phone. It's a very weird.
Well, it's an old landline phone that has like the metal ringer bell built into it with the long, spiral extension cord so you can walk around the house. This movie is in 2016, mind you. So an interesting choice. But man, he's just coked out of his mind. It's seeming, mostly coke. I'm sure there's some other stuff going on, but mostly coke. And, he's getting phone calls for this like teenage girl who's not his daughter, but the daughter of the woman's whose house it is, right? It's like that's juxtaposed with whatever the hell he's doing, and she's talking about like decorating cupcakes. It was very weird and jarring, that whole thing.
And as he's doing drugs, that I put my next note is Jesus painting, because there's a random painting of Jesus in the background while he's doing all this cocaine. And telling somebody that he guts fish.
See, it's funny. I didn't really think about it so much as a Jesus painting. It was more of just like, a nod to the fact that he played Jesus once.
Maybe it was, but it's just weird. Like, I just thought it was one of those things for trying to be edgy. Like, he's going to be doing drugs in front of Jesus. Like,
ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's then, let's see, drug montage is my next note, which you could use to describe a bunch of scenes in this movie.
Yeah.
And then drug reflection. I don't really know what that meant.
Right. So in the mirror,
he's doing
things. Yeah, they're doing this warping effect in the mirror, and there are moments where I thought to myself, "Is it a warping effect, or is that just his real face?" Because Dafoe's got a very expression-filled face.
He does.
An expressive face.
Yes, that's why he gets hired.
Yeah.
Casual racism is my next note, because he dropped the N-word like in the first 5 minutes of the movie.
There's a lot of racism. It's
not just using that
him.
Word. It's also a stereotype that he uses.
Mm-hmm. But it's mostly coming from his character. Now, the other guys do it too, but nowhere near as much as Dafoe's character does. And I guess maybe we should get their names. So Dafoe plays a character named Mad Dog. That's the only name he goes by. The
titular character.
Troy is Nicolas Cage, and Christopher Matthew Cook plays Diesel. Those are our big three.
Right.
So
then we get into casual murder from the casual racism, where he says he's going to eat this woman's ass in a sexual way. And then some stuff happens and he murders her.
Yeah. So I guess he's, a deadbeat ex-boyfriend kind of situation.
He was looking at porn on her computer.
Yeah. And she got really mad about that.
Told him to leave. And then he pulled the fish gutting knife from his ankle and slits her throat and stabs her like 30 times in the back. And then her daughter comes downstairs, sees what happens, starts screaming, goes upstairs, and he goes and gets a gun.
Mm-hmm.
And
which he referenced earlier, where he has a suitcase of guns. That was his only possession, was his suitcase of guns.
And he goes up and puts a pillow over her and starts shooting her through the pillow.
Mm-hmm.
And then sits and does more cocaine on the bed while she's, dead.
Right.
Next to him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then we get a 3-day time jump. The only time we're told how much time has passed.
Right.
In the movie, which I guess we could have probably done without. The fact that it's been 3 days is not super relevant.
And then we get the noir voiceover from Nick Cage on the black and white shot.
The black and white strip club, because we're going to make the strip club look classy, I guess, in grayscale.
Well, the strip club and nudity and sex acts and things like that are all throughout this movie, including sexual assault and things like that. So, really great stuff. Sarcasm. But yeah, we get a few minutes of Nick Cage doing a voiceover about I think he's going through at this point his character and what his relationship was to these other guys.
Yeah, it's a huge exposition.
Prison. Though. Yeah, they all met through prison, and Mad Dog saved him one time, and Diesel's the smart guy, even though he's also the biggest guy.
Right. Everyone assumes he's the lunk, he's the muscle, but no, he's very bright. In another world, I forget exactly what the phrasing is. Like in another world, he would have been like a doctor or some stupid thing. But yeah, we learn that they each got out at different times, and Nick Cage, Troy, is the last of the three to get out. So they're celebrating that he is now a free man, so to speak, by bringing him to the strip club. Yeah.
Yeah. And we're at the strip club. Mad Dog says that he doesn't know who the fuck Taylor Swift is. Or something like that. I don't know. He references Taylor Swift. I just thought it was funny. And there is a callback to that later in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
But then we get a color shot of Nick Cage trying on his suit.
Right.
After jail. And I'm going to be honest, he looked really good in that suit. That was a nice suit for him.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
It was like almost like a powder blue suit. Not what I expected, because you've seen him in the suit, but only in the black and white. And then it shows the color, and it's a very vibrant blue.
It was a good look for him.
Yeah. Then we get the lap dance.
Where I guess he thought his friends were buying him more than a lap dance.
Well, yeah.
Because she says it's 1,500, and I don't know a lot, but I do know that is definitely more than a lap dance. So,
well, it could be a really nice lap dance.
I mean, like a 10-hour lap dance. I don't know, but either way, he thought his friends paid for it. They didn't pay for it, so he pays for it. That's that.
Somehow he has a bunch of money,
tons of money. He has so much. Like, yeah, they're just like flashing bills around. Even though the whole point of the movie is that they're broke.
Yeah. And then we get this weird corner shot that I referenced earlier where he's having a conversation with his guy that like sets up all his jobs and also gives him money.
Right.
Where they're like talking to each other, but for some reason the shot of each character is like in the corner facing away from the person they're talking, and you only see the one character at a time. It's a very weird shot. Somebody trying something that didn't really work.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Then we get to see this cop car.
Well, it's
going to be cops.
Yeah, it's not really a cop car.
No, but they like
they put stickers.
Duct tape. They put like duct tape on in the shape of the words, and the nothing is spaced appropriately, and they have like a stupid light on top that doesn't even look like a cop car light.
Well, like it's all of this is very like just it's weird. We learned so much about the fact that these three guys like went to prison and they got out of prison and they're best buddies, but we don't really get great explanations for like what they're doing. Because this guy, I'm looking out, I'm trying to find this guy's name, but this older dude, they call him what do they call him?
It's like his fixer, basically.
Yeah, but he's got like
the guy they get to that gives him jobs.
But he's got a name in the movie. He's like the Greek or something like that. I can't remember his freaking name, but either way, like, yeah, he knows everybody and he's best friends with everybody. So he has every possible illegal job.
Greco the Greek.
Thank you. And so like, he's just this like weird middleman guy who's just friends with everybody to sell jobs to each other. It was very weird.
Yeah.
And then he's going to pay Nick Cage and his buddies to just go get drugs and money.
Do crime. Yeah.
Right. Is all it is. So they're just like, guns for hire, I guess.
And I feel like at this point, I don't think I have a note about it because I didn't realize how important it was going to be later in the movie. But throughout this movie, Nick Cage's character consistently asks people and makes references to the fact that he looks like Humphrey Bogart.
Yep. Yeah.
He asks several people. There's several small references to it. And that becomes more relevant later in the movie. I didn't think it would, so I don't really have much in the way of notes on that. But so we get that look of the cop car, and then we also see that there's three of them in this cop car. Mm-hmm. One cop in quotes in the back seat, and then the two up front. Mm-hmm. And we get like this very tense scene where they go pick up a dealer, I guess, and they're trying to get to his money stash. Mm-hmm. And they take him to multiple locations and like try and get him to show where the money is, and they end up finding his drugs, and it's just an incredibly tense scene. I would say that of all the scenes in the movie, that was probably my favorite because it was so tense, and they actually did a really good job maintaining the intention in that scene. It never felt comfortable.
That's fair. There was a lot going on. Like, so the way they get this guy is they pull him over. Well, they pull over his driver. It's two guys in a car, and he's in the passenger seat, and he is a black man. And so, there's a lot of references from his perspective about, cops kind of have a license to do whatever they want in these situations. So he's trying to play it cool. He's trying to cooperate because he thinks they're really cops, at least, at first. And so I thought that for a little bit, I was like, oh, okay, maybe this movie's got some points to make. Maybe this is going to go somewhere, right? We're going to build off of this. I was wrong, but there was a bit of a bright spot during this part of the movie where I thought it was going to go in a different direction. But like once they take him to the house, that's supposed to be like where the stash is. There's like one guy guarding the house. And I feel like it would have been easier for the three of them just to break into the house sometime.
It's also interesting because this is they have these houses. Where they initially get the guy and then where they go for the stash house. They're in what seem to be primarily black neighborhoods. There's a lot of people outside gathering, watching. and things like that. And at the second house, they start like shooting into the house.
Yeah.
Because they realize that they're not cops. And it gets even more tense from there. They end up getting away and no real anything happens, but they do get a bunch of drugs.
Yeah, they get a bunch of cocaine, no money. I guess maybe it's worth pointing out this whole movie takes place in Cleveland, Ohio, which they
and not
say
once did they use the
again.
song from the Drew Carey show, which really makes me disappointed.
Well, they were focusing on the seedy underbelly of Cleveland, and that does not rock, sir.
Fair enough. So then we get this really weird, there's a lot of really weird scenes in this movie, but we get this really weird drug party with the three of them like hugging and fondling each other and like being
in the hotel room?
naked. Yeah. And doing just a ton of drugs. And at this point, we basically learned that every woman wants Nick Cage in this world because they constantly are telling him how handsome he is.
Well, so first off, did they go to Vegas for the night?
It sure seemed like it, or maybe Atlantic City or something. I don't really know, but it sure seemed like a Vegas type.
Okay, because that's what I thought too.
Yeah, it was very ambiguous.
Okay, just checking. Yeah.
Yeah.
But like he's like, there's this.
They're all trying to get laid.
They're all trying to get laid, and they're all really bad at it.
Yes.
In completely different ways, but they're all really bad at it.
Yes.
Right. So like Nick Cage's character, like, I guess likes this chick. And so I don't know if they've met before or he's hired her before. I don't really know, but it seems like he bought her some special gemstone thing. Like, why would he have done that if he had just met her that night? It's very weird, but she clearly is not interested. Like where did he want to take her to France? I think
something like that. Yeah, he kept naming this place. I don't really know, but
yeah, he wanted to take her to France, and she's not paying any attention.
She's clearly not like really high class. Like her clothes very much reminded me of like 80s movies where you see like a hooker in the 80s movies, and they're wearing like the specific type of tight dress. Like it was not a very modern, like high class sex worker. It didn't appear. They were trying to make it seem like she's not like, you know, it was a little weird. Usually when you're going to see somebody like offering to fly someone to France and like buying gems and stuff, you think this is going to be like a really expensive sex worker that they just fell in love with or something. And in this case, it didn't really get that vibe.
Well, maybe it works for him the other way around because he figures she could use the money.
But it turns out she's not interested really at all.
Not at all. She
wants to give him $1,500 for a blowjob.
No,
or she wants him.
It was an extra $300.
Oh, was it 300?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, the 1,500 was at the strip
club.
Yeah. It was an extra 300, and she is just not interested in what he's putting down, and so that.
But she's really interested in how good she is at this blowjob.
Oh yeah, she thinks she's great.
Amazing apparently. And then we get to see Willem Dafoe getting a hand job, a very weird clinical hand job. Like it's not like sexy at all. It's like a woman that looks like she's wearing like nurse scrubs.
I felt like maybe she was a masseuse, and this was like a happy ending kind of thing.
But we don't see anything except the hand job.
Well, there is a moment. So when Nick Cage comes back into the room, the way the camera turns, which again, like is very awkward, you can see into that room, and she is like bouncing on his back. So like, she's mostly clothed, and she's like bouncing on his back. And I don't know what that was, but that was what that was happening first.
Gotcha. Okay, so yeah, it was apparently a massage situation, but she's the whole time commenting about how long it's taking, and it's just incredibly uncomfortable for everybody involved.
And then she gets on her phone.
She starts browsing her phone while she's doing it, and he tells her to get off of him and blah blah blah. And
he freaks out.
Assumedly has blue balls after that, and you know, he seems like he's on the verge of killing people the entire movie. So, you know. That that would have helped. Maybe that would have helped with that. I don't know.
He's definitely on edge the entire time everything's happening.
And my next note is weird ass crew doesn't know how to talk to women.
Well, right. So then you got Diesel. So Diesel meets this chick at the bar.
He does pretty well, kind of.
For a little while, but he's just kind of an asshole, though. I'm not really sure why she's interested in him to begin with. Like, he's insulting the bartender, even though the bartender, he openly says is following policy. So the bartender's an asshole, but he's just doing his job. So then he's not doing anything wrong, but he's a jerk. And then she just follows him up to his room, and they're just having these conversations, and he doesn't like all the questions she's asking. And so he just completely loses his mind.
Yeah. Yeah. Throughout the movie, they make it a point to show that he seems like he's like the calmest member of the crew and just generally thinks about things. But in this moment, he does not do any of that. And it's very out of character from what we've seen to this point. So. So none of them really are successful with the women, and they all meet up the next morning, kind of hungover from, the drug party the night before.
A really depressing breakfast.
Yes, and Willem Dafoe's character, who in this whole movie is just really weird, has bare feet, and he's like rubbing it all over the carpet. And he makes a comment that I wrote down because it was a really weird comment.
Okay.
I didn't write it down word for word, but he comments about how if you got to put your feet down on the floor in prison, it felt sticky like boogers and jizz all over the floor.
Yep.
But that the carpet felt like a shaved pussy.
Yep. Those were things he said. Those are absolutely things he said.
Yeah. And so my next note is this script feels like it was written by a teenage boy.
It's rough, man. It is really rough. Now, look, neither of us, to my knowledge, have ever been to prison. Certainly not for multiple years. So, I'm sure there is something to the cold, hard, isolated aspects to prison where it's just stone and metal. I truly believe that is a big thing for people. But yeah, just the way the line is
boogers
delivered,
and jizz. I feel like people are responsible for cleaning their own cells in jail. So if it feels like there's boogers and jizz on the floor, then you probably aren't doing a very good job.
And what's wild is like this whole movie, for those who don't know, is based on a novel. So like I've never read it. Okay. So I don't know how much of this is like in the novel, right? Like what is this like word for word dialogue? Because the guy who did the screenplay, Matthew Wilder, like he's only done 2 other movies. And so like this, I don't really know, how one-to-one this is with the book. But if that's the way the book is written, I mean, it's very clunky and weird. And Dafoe's already like, he's kind of a strange guy, right? I think we can admit that he's kind of a strange guy. So when he's the one delivering these lines, it's just that much more unsettling. And maybe that's the whole point, right? Maybe everything in here is just to feel unsettling.
And it just made it seem like it was trying to be edgy the whole time to me. And it didn't really ever feel unsettling. It mostly just felt like somebody trying too hard.
Fair enough.
So next I have kidnapping kids for my notes. So I assume that at this point we're getting into the main plot line of the movie where they're supposed to be kidnapping this kid that from a dad that owes money to this other guy, like a few $1 million or something.
Yeah.
And they're going to pay the crew $500,000 plus the $250,000 bonus for
plus
kidnapping
half of the money if they get it.
Plus half. Yeah, some percentage of the money. I couldn't remember if it was half or like 20% or what. But.
So potentially these guys could take home almost $3 million if they do this correctly. Right. And so at this point, we learn a couple of different things. We learn that all 3 guys have 2 strikes and that they refuse to go back into prison, but that they don't have any money. Now we're watching them blow tons of money.
Well,
right?
They're blowing tons of drugs. Like they get all the drugs from that person. And then they're using all those drugs, but we don't necessarily see them spending money after that. We hear about the gem bracelet or whatever.
Well, that's the thing. Like, right. He buys the gems. They go to this hotel casino place. They're getting hookers.
Well, but they may just be trading drugs for all this.
Maybe he did pay $1,500 to be with that first stripper early on in the movie.
Well, we definitely see money in that scene.
Right. Yeah. Like, so like they're seemingly spending it. But maybe they're just trading stolen drugs. I don't really know. But yeah, basically the idea here is like, well, this is their one last score.
Right. And they all get together to have a conversation about whether they want to do this or not. And they decide that they're going to do it samurai style, and which apparently means that they either succeed or they all die doing it. And when they say samurai style, Mad Dog goes, "Look, Jackie Chan."
Jesus Christ.
For some reason, that just cracked me the fuck up. Oh my God, it was so funny.
Couldn't tell, like, is that line just plain dumb, or is it also racist? Because it feels
I think
racist.
it's a little of both, but I don't really know what the intention was. It was just so out of left field for me that I laughed. So yeah.
But like they agree that they're all going to go down fighting, but they don't really say how. Like, are they going to off themselves? Are they going to off each other? Like, what is the plan if they get caught? They never actually say it.
Yeah, they're just going to kill each other, I guess. Or it's unknown. So then they roll up on the house where the baby is at, or the kid, whatever.
Well, no, but before that happens, we get cut to a car, and there's this older guy in a car having a phone conversation. We get no explanation for who this guy is. You can probably make an educated guess, but it's just a guess. You have no idea who he's talking to or what the hell he's talking about. And then he goes into this house and he sits down at a sofa. And the next thing we know are three motley crew.
After the scene when they pull up to the house, because I have that as my next note, is random guy with gun scene.
Well, but the car scene's before they pull up to the house.
Well, I don't know. In my notes, it doesn't really matter, but my notes, I have the car scene before that. So,
okay.
In any case, I thought the house that they pulled up to looked a lot like the house from Inconceivable.
You think so?
Just me. I don't know if it's the same house, but it definitely looked similar to me.
I didn't get that vibe.
Not the interior, but the outside did.
I don't really quite remember.
That's fair. So yeah, then we get the random guy with the gun scene that Derek was describing. And so yeah, they break into the house, and there's what they think is a guard at the house. But they manage to sneak past the guard and get upstairs to get to the baby and the caretaker for the baby, who's asleep next to the crib. And as they go to take the baby, the guard guy opens the door and starts yelling at him, and Mad Dog immediately just blasts his fucking head off, like completely into like sci-fi movie. Mm-hmm. Like his head splits into two pieces, and it's just showers blood everywhere.
That's where he heals himself back together, and the movie takes a hard turn.
Right, into sci-fi. No, I wish. But yeah, so they kill this guy, and the baby starts crying. And my least favorite line in the movie, this is the most edgy and try-hard line, in my opinion, in the whole movie. Nick Cage's character asks what you put in the baby's mouth.
Oh, God.
What you put in the baby's mouth to stop him from crying, and Mad Dog says, "My dick," or something along those lines.
A dick, yeah.
A dick.
Yeah.
It's just a really terrible line. It's not funny.
Like, this is a movie where if we weren't going to be talking about it on a podcast, I would not have finished it. Which for me is a rare thing. I could probably count...
since we started this podcast, it's been a lot.
I mean, yeah.
I think that's the third or fourth time you've said that since we started, yeah.
God damn, man. Maybe it is, but this is probably the most like offensive movie we've watched.
So yeah, I think that and I'm going to say this, and I'm saying something very brave to put this on the internet, that this movie had a lot of similarities to Mandy.
Interesting.
In the sense that like a lot of it, you don't know if it's actually happening, or it's very stylized and things like that. But I think where this movie failed on trying to be edgy, that Mandy succeeded because it leaned into its absurdity. And this movie tries to just make like edgy jokes and not lean into its absurdity as much. I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but I felt like there's a lot of similarities, and this was like a poorly done version of what they actually did in Mandy.
That's interesting. I never really thought about it that way. There's certainly some cinematography type things that they have in common. That's definitely a fair point to make. This one is it's trying to be grounded, right? It's trying to be real.
Maybe that's what it was. That Mandy, like was absurd, and it
Mhm.
leaned into that, and so it could take it really far. Whereas this movie is absurd, but it's trying to be more real, and it just doesn't work.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair point.
So then we get a really weird scene, and I hate it when we get scenes like this with Nick Cage, because I love Nick Cage, and when he has to do these scenes, I do not like it. But they end up like telling this woman, they end up packing up the body of the guy
Mhm.
in one of the cars and telling this woman that they give her a phone and keep the baby with her and tell her that she better not leave, and that they're going to call her with the combination to the lock, and that there's guards all around. So if she tries to leave, then they're going to kill her or whatever. And then on the way out, Nick Cage like just forces himself onto this woman with a kiss.
Mhm.
And it's very uncomfortable.
Mhm.
And it's really the only time we see his character do this in the whole movie. So it's kind of out of left field altogether.
It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't fit in with anything else we've seen in the movie at all, other than like, I guess everybody's just an asshole, right? And this is another example of Nick Cage playing an asshole character who seems like the hero because everybody else is just worse.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because like there's like, even before they actually leave the mansion, there's another woman who shows up that he kills.
Oh yeah, he just straight out kills her because she's worried about what's happening in the house.
And it's like, it's unclear, like, is that the baby's mom? Is this a different person? Like, it's just that whole family structure is left nebulous and confusing the whole time.
Also, after this scene, they literally never address what happened to this woman and their baby.
Never.
And the baby that they lock up. So yeah, that's a fun unresolved thing.
My hope is that the Greek guy handles it, because he said he was gonna take care of it, but we never see him again.
Hear.
So
so then we get some more casual racism, more N-word drops
like
from,
you do.
I think, Mad Dog. So then Mad Dog and the Diesel, was that his name?
Mm-hmm.
They're gonna go and take care of the body. Mad Dog says that he's got a place for the body, and so on their way out, Mad Dog's like, I just gotta stop and take care of something real quick. Let me just stop. And Diesel's like, no, this body stinks. We gotta go get it taken care of. And he's like, just stop, 5 minutes. And so they go and walk through this whole strip club.
Again, this is at least the third time we've been in this strip club.
Walks to the back room, does a bunch of coke, has a character building moment with Diesel, and then walks out, and they go and dump the body. It's just a really weird scene all around. But this whole car ride, Mad Dog is basically like trying to be, he says he knows that Diesel doesn't like him, and he just wants nothing more than Diesel to think of him as a friend, like Diesel does with Nick Cage's character, Troy. Yeah.
Well, because Mad Dog is an extremely pathetic character. That's what we really get from the movie as a whole. This is a pathetic human being. And so he doesn't think highly of himself. He does horrible things. He knowingly does horrible things. And he's like trying to admit to Diesel basically the opening scene of the movie.
Yeah, where he kills the woman and her daughter.
But it takes like 10 minutes of screen time for this story to come out. I was really like, I just needed them to move on to another part of the story.
I will say that one thing about this movie is that it was short. So thank God for that, because
its runtime is short. It did not feel short.
No, but I was happy when I looked at the clock and it was only an hour and a half later from after I started when it was over, because some of these movies are so long and boring, and anyway, that's the best part of this movie, is that it was only an hour and a half.
Well, it wasn't helped by the Tubi ads that I had to watch, so
yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
But that's not part of this movie. That's part of the Tubi,
which true.
We've definitely vented about before. So then they're moving. They're basically, they find out, or Diesel finds out that he wants to take this guy's body to the place where Mad Dog dumped the woman and her daughter's bodies, who've been there at this point presumably for several days, maybe a week, something like that. Mm-hmm. And so they take the bodies,
an abandoned military base of some kind.
Yeah, something like that. That they just don't go to anymore, and so they start moving this body. It's weird because the woman that Mad Dog killed before was not like a small woman. And presumably he was able to take that body up these stairs and everything by himself. Whereas they're both really struggling with this one guy.
I don't believe it for a moment unless he like chopped her up.
Which he didn't, because you see that like she's a solid piece when he gets up there.
That's what I thought, but I don't see how else he could have done it.
Yeah. Anyway, they're really struggling to get this guy's body up there. And during this, Mad Dog is trying to have like a heart-to-heart with Diesel about how he wants him to list, like after this, have them sit down for a little while, and he wants Diesel to list 5 character flaws about him.
Right, that he can work on.
Right. And they get the body up the stairs, and then immediately it's too much weight for this platform, and they fall through the stairs, or fall through the floor, and Mad Dog is still talking about these 5 character flaws as if nothing happened. And at this point, Diesel's like, no, I'm done. And he pops Mad Dog, blows his head off, and leaves. And we see like the rotting corpse of the woman and the daughter briefly. It's a rough scene. They're like slipping in her blood and like guts and rotten stuff. It's wonderful. Then we get a flashback to presumably the drug party again, except this time they all have a bunch of like ketchup and mustard bottles, and they're just shooting it all over themselves and each other.
Yeah, this is Troy's character. This is Troy reminiscing because he just learned that Mad Dog is dead.
Right. But for some reason, we're seeing them in some sort of condiment orgy now.
I expected music. You're like, I will remember you.
Yeah, but we didn't get that.
It would have been better.
It was very weird. So, so then they meet at the supermarket, Diesel and Troy. And this is where we get our Taylor Swift callback. Diesel's looking at a magazine, and it has Taylor Swift on the cover. So I'm sorry, Taylor Swift, that you had to be referenced in this movie
twice.
You've been besmirched by whatever this terrible crap is. But so then while Diesel's walking around doing groceries, Troy is waiting in the car, and Diesel is looking at meats at their deli or whatever, and while he's leaned forward, he has a very shiny chrome gun sticking out of the back of his pants, and presumably some employee there sees it and calls the police. And that was actually the most believable part of the movie, because having worked in retail and have seen managers react to people that where we're at, open carrying a gun is totally legal, and concealed carrying a gun is, I believe, legal as well, whether you have a license or not. And I've seen managers call the police for just somebody carrying a gun. Whether you agree with that as a good thing or a bad thing, it is a legal thing. But in this case,
to the police's credit, that's the answer that they gave the manager.
But still, they go and try and stop the guy.
They do continue to investigate.
Yes. And so one of the cops goes inside, and then the other one says that she's going to run the plates. And so instead of running the plates, she drives up very obviously behind Troy's car and gets out of the car and asks him for his ID. And so then we get Nick Cage punching women again, which is
in slow motion for some reason.
Slow motion, yeah, because you have to see this in slow motion. And the slow motion isn't even believable, so that makes it even worse.
So to that point, there was a moment when it happened where I thought that it was in his head.
Well, there's several points towards the end of this movie where you're not really sure if things are happening or what's happening. I didn't ever really think that particularly was in his head, but it could have been. I can see how you would think that. But
just
so
he
starts, beating the crap out of this woman in slow motion. And then I can't remember. Does he shoot the cop, or does the other person shoot the cop?
No, Diesel does. Because Diesel comes out. Basically, Diesel comes out at this point and, sees the two cops fighting over Troy. And then he shoots at the woman and gets her like right in like kind of like the upper chest, shoulder area, clavicle area.
But kills her.
No, she doesn't die.
I thought it said she died in the hospital over the news when they're.
I thought it said she lived. I thought it said she lived. But
well, either way, they shoot a cop.
Of course, that scene is questionable anyway.
Yeah, that's true. And then, so then Diesel, the other cop goes and starts beating the crap out of Nick Cage's character, and Diesel steals the cop's car
because they get backup.
Yes,
so he steals this cruiser this like SUV that pulls up.
Yes, and you think he's gonna run away, but instead he gets in the samurai mode and comes back and like starts trying to pull the police off into a chase, and he tries to kill himself by flying at a hill or a wall or something in the cop car, and I think he kills himself. It's ambiguous.
Yeah, it's just I think we're supposed to assume he's dead.
Yeah. So then we get the scene where the two of the cops are taking Troy to the police station or whatever, but they stop in a parking lot somewhere, and this is where things start to get weird. They just start beating the shit out of him, punching him, kicking him, whatever, and then they handcuff his wrist to the cop car and start driving around. Okay, and this is the last we see of Troy for a moment. The next scene when we see him, he is not at all attached to a cop car. He's just walking around, except now he has like a little bit of swelling on his face and like his back is burned up as if he was drugged around by the cop car.
Well, because we get introduced to the diner.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right? And we get, it's another like black and white shot that moves into color. It's like the 55th Street Diner or something like that. Yeah. And it looks very out of place.
And on the TV, it shows that there was a cop that I thought it said that she passed away and was shot by these people. Either way, it doesn't matter. We don't need to debate it. But it shows these two people dining there.
This older couple
walking out and getting in the car, talking about how good it was. And then we see Nick Cage's character Troy just pop up in the back seat and point a gun at him. And they have this back and forth. But at this point, we realize that now, for some reason, he talks like Humphrey Bogart.
Yep.
Like, not just like he got hurt and has a lisp or like a weird accent. He is straight up like his whole manner of speaking, the words that he's choosing to use. It's like a totally different character now. And so you don't really know if this is a dream sequence or like this is the last thing he's thinking about when he's dying or like what this is. Because again, last we saw him, he was chained to a cop car.
Right.
And we never saw him get away from that. We just saw him in this next scene, now free. And eventually the people pull over. He assures them that they're going to be fine as long as they listen to him. And we find out that one of them is a reverend, that the man is a reverend. And so he takes over driving and puts them in the back seat. And when he gets in the driver's seat, it's like clouds all around the car, essentially. You can't really see anything out of the windows.
Right.
But then there's some police sirens and he gets pulled over. And so he gets out of the car and looks at them, and these cops have guns drawn on him, multiple cop cars. And then the cops just start shooting the car.
Just the car.
With the people in it while Nick Cage is just standing there shooting at them.
So Nick Cage is mowing down these cops one bullet at a time with this like revolver, and the cops are just destroying this old couple.
Yeah, they must have gotten shot like 40 times. And it is pertinent to say that this couple was black.
That's true.
So, and there's been casual racism thrown throughout the movie. And also, you know, in the real world, there's a lot of things happening with police violence towards black people and things along those lines. I don't necessarily know that that's what this movie was doing a commentary on, but there is a lot of violence against black people in this movie.
That's true. The male cop, one of the male cops is black, who beats up on Nick Cage. The partner of the woman cop who gets shot, he's black. But yeah, I know that's the thing, right? Like, was the casting on purpose? Was it coincidental? Like, was it just a sheer accident because these people I don't know. It's a mess.
Yeah, but literally this whole scene, this whole end, like last 5 or 10 minutes of the movie, Nick Cage is doing this Humphrey Bogart impression. It's very distracting.
And it's still fogged all the way around, but it's kind of lit up like kind of red or blue because of the.
And this is where the Mandy
Yeah.
parallels start to really become obvious to me.
I see that now big time. I didn't think about it in the moment, but I get it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I had a note in here that just says, what the fuck? I think that's when, and honestly, I think I've had that same note for at least half the movies that we reviewed.
Oh my God.
But I think that was when like the cops started machine gunning the couple in the back of the car for seemingly no reason. I have no idea. My next note says loaded his body into the cop car. Because I think after they shoot Nick Cage, which he does die at the end, which is also happens in a lot of these movies, a weird number of these movies, they just kind of kill him and then they just throw his body in the back of the cop cars. And that's the end of the movie. It literally just says the end. There's no explanation given. So yeah, that was the movie.
That was the movie. Man, he has died in the last 5 movies we've watched.
And throughout the whole run that we've done, it's probably been at least half the movies that we've watched.
That's so crazy. Like Mandy is open to interpretation.
Yeah. I
think. So you could maybe you remove that one. He doesn't die in Moonstruck or The Family Man. Like he dies in most of these movies.
It's very weird. It's a very weird choice. I don't know why. This is not something I would have ever put together had we not done this podcast.
Right.
I feel like we should start like keeping track of that though, because
I think it's a good idea.
Because it'll be interesting at the end of this to go, okay, so we reviewed 120 Nick Cage movies and he's died at the end of 87 of those movies. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like, well, because we've done 16 and he has died in 1, 2, 3, 4, 9, at least 9 of them, possibly 10, depending on how you interpret Mandy.
Yeah.
So 9 of 16 he has died in.
So right now our percentage is pretty high. It's like a 60% of the movies that we've done. Crazy. But yeah, this movie, not great. It's if you're looking for like an artsy, I don't really know when I would ever recommend somebody watch this movie. But like, I mean, if you really liked Mandy and you're like, want to see Nick Cage in another weird artsy movie, you could watch this one. You'll be disappointed. I'm just going to tell you.
Yeah.
This is more of a Willem Dafoe showcase, I feel like. He got to really chew the scenery in this one. It didn't really work for me because of the script, but he did a good job with what he was given.
I mean, I would go out on a limb and say of the 16 movies we've watched, I would rather watch any of them over this.
Really?
Because
I found this one to be at least more entertaining than several, at the very least. I would rather watch this than the Outcast movie that we watched.
I mean, there's some that are boring, right? Like Inconceivable definitely is pretty boring. Right. But like, at least Outcast has like some cool fighting and Hayden Christensen and like Nick Cage snake hands. Like,
well, you and I may be farther apart on this than I thought we were.
I don't know. I can find something redeemable in all of the other movies that we've watched.
Yeah.
I don't have anything nice to say about this movie at all.
Fair enough. I mean, I feel like that they did a really good job, like maintaining the tension in a lot of the scenes and making me go, well, where's this scene going to end? How's this going to end?
Is that because they held the tension well, or because it's such a chaotically handled movie that there's just no way to know what's going to happen next?
Yeah, either one.
I think that's my problem. It's just kind of bonkers, right? And nothing's resolved. We don't know what happened to the baby and the nanny at all. We don't.
Oh, I guess we didn't really talk about that. So the guy that they killed and blew the head off of was the guy that owed the money.
Yeah, they were trying to ransom him.
Yeah, so instead of that, then now they just killed the guy. So now that's why they were like freaking out, and
because the guy who hired them, his name is Chepe, is really, really mad and really, really upset, and the Greek's going to try and calm him down. So Troy thinks that like they're going to get like offed, by this by a
Right.
combination of the Greek and Chepe.
But again, never resolved. We don't know.
Never resolved. Well, because like the timing doesn't make any sense either, right? So Troy's talking to the Greek, and the Greek's like, all right, meet me tomorrow at 10 at the place by the bagel shop or whatever. And
Which is literally what they said.
right,
Is that by the donut shop or whatever?
It's by the bagel place. And then the next day happens. Troy is with Diesel. They're going food shopping, and he's still deciding whether he's going to meet with the Greek or not. So that never happens. We never see the Greek ever again. We never see Chepe ever again. We never see the baby ever again. We don't know what happens to any of these threads.
Yeah.
At all. We assume that Diesel dies. We don't know for sure. We assume Nick Cage dies, but we don't know when he died.
Yeah.
Right?
You're sure he's dead at the end. We just don't know if it happened. Yeah, when it happened.
I mean, if he had shown up in another scene, would that have been that outrageous given the film?
He did show up in another scene. I mean, after he was presumably killed.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's like even after this Humphrey Bogart scene that he has where they stuff him in the trunk, like what if they just cut to like a courtroom and he's sitting in the courtroom, right, with his hands in handcuffs? Like that could have been in the movie.
I would have rather that I prefer this where it just, at least it seems like we see him die.
In a fogged out, smoky dreamland,
That's where the theory of maybe this is like the last thing he's thinking about as he's dying kind of came into play. I don't really know why he'd be dreaming about a random couple at a diner and then like them getting massacred, but
I don't know. Even the guy that they're trying to get the stash from, that's not even resolved because they never got the stash. They just stole some of the drugs. They never get the money.
That's true.
So that's not resolved either.
That's true.
Right? So like literally nothing is resolved in this movie. And I think like that's why it feels like there's tension because there's just zero answers. They just keep bouncing around to a new thing.
Yeah. It's a very weird movie. We need to rate it. We can just go on and on about how weird it is for a long time.
So the way we do this, for those who don't know, we have our Cage-O-meter where we rate our movies based on quality and caginess, 0 to 20, 0 being low, 20 being high. And we did a 20-point scale because this dude's in over 100 films and we wanted to at least try to have room for all of them. So Ryan, from a quality standpoint, where would you put Dog Eat Dog?
I mean, low. Probably like a 4.
Okay.
Because I did think that like, there were scenes where the tension was high and, I would rather watch it than some of the other movies only because at least I wasn't falling asleep during this movie, which isn't the highest of compliments, but
that's fair. So this is hard for me because I'm regretting how
you literally say that every week. So come on. I'm
regretting how I scored Zondali because I feel like I was unfair to Zondali because I'd rather watch Zondali than this. And so I want to like retroactively increase my score for Zondali. I can't do that. But because of that, I feel like I'm forced to give this the same grade because there isn't a lower score, which is a 1.
I feel like if you had just watched Zondali or whatever, and had to recap this movie, you would be thinking that you were being unfair to this movie because like neither of them were good. I obviously don't remember the podcast where we were talking about how much you hated that movie.
Oh, no. Zondali's a bad movie. It is a bad movie, but I wish I had given it like a 2 or a 3. So there'd be a little bit of a floor here. I feel like I just picked the floor too soon. And Zondali is not the floor for me. It's near it. It's definitely there.
So are you going to give this one a 0?
No, I'm giving it a 1.
Okay.
I'm giving it a 1. So so a 2.5 is the overall score for Dog Eat Dog. So there's that. So now for caginess. So this, I guess I'll score first on this one. There's really not much to go off of here other than the Humphrey Bogart bit at the end. He plays it fairly straight. There's one little bit when he's meeting with the Greek and Chepe where he does a little something weird. I can't even quite remember what it was now, so it's not even that significant. So there's not a lot of caginess happening. So just kind of like looking at some previous scores, I don't know, like
the Humphrey Bogart thing at the end is worth a little bit to me, I feel like.
So that's why I was saying like maybe like a 4. I think I'm going to give it a 4 on caginess, right? Because like I think you're right, that does matter, but it's just like one scene tacked on to the end of the film.
And also like that probably wasn't his decision. That was probably like written into the script. So is it really that cagey doing a Bogart impression?
Exactly. So that's
why, I'm with you. I was going to give it a 5. So
okay, 5. Okay. So 4.5 then for caginess, 2.5 for overall quality. That does put it pretty low. So from a caginess standpoint, there are a couple movies that are less cagey, Rage, Joe, and The Cotton Club. But from a quality standpoint, really just Zondervan sits below Dog Eat Dog. So
which, for me, Zondervan had a lot more like sexual assault themes.
I mean, that's fair.
And so for me, that was definitely a worse movie because of that. I am okay with violence and drug use, but the sexual assault themes are definitely a problem for me. So that I stick with that. I think that this was, I would rather watch this.
That's fair. That's fair. I don't condone any of that either. I gave them both 1s.
No, it's all terrible. And I'm not saying you condone any of that. It's just, yeah.
Now, we do have to pick the movie that will be joining the Wheel O Cage to replace Dog Eat Dog on the wheel. And that movie is going to be Stolen. Stolen is the name of that movie. So to find out what movie we're going to talk about next on the show, go to comingofcage.com or follow us on social media to see our Wheel O Cage spin. That'll come out a week after this episode, the following Monday. We alternate. Every other Monday is an episode. Every alternating Monday is a Wheel of Cage. So go find out what movie we'll be talking about next. If you've never seen the wheel before, you can go watch some previous spins if you would like. Ryan, is there anything else you would like to add about Dog Eat Dog?
No, not anything.
All right. Well, then that's going to be it for us. Thank you so much. Comingofcage.com. I'm Derek. That was Ryan. Thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you next time.